The film begins with a woman named Mallory Hayes gathering her two children, a girl and a boy. She informs them that they will be rowing down a river for several days as part of their voyage. Their destination is a remote forest house where they will meet other friends. However, there is one important condition to follow. They must wear blindfolds the entire trip, and if the children accidentally remove them, they will suffer serious repercussions. Mallory leads them outside, all three of them blindfolded, and she brings her pet birds with her. They arrive to the riverbank, where a waiting boat is waiting. Mallory launches the boat into the river, and they all board to begin their voyage. Following this scene, the film flashes back 5 years. Mallory is a budding artist who is currently 8 months pregnant. She just divorced and is still dealing with the fallout from her divorce. One day, as she is painting, her sister Jessica arrives with disturbing news. Jessica reports that people were hastily loading up on groceries at the department store owing to the expected arrival of a strange thing. Mallory, who has been sequestered from the outside world since her divorce, is initially unaware of the circumstances. She goes on the television to find that every news channel is covering a mystery outbreak that has ravaged sections of Eastern Europe. The virus's symptoms are unusual, causing anyone infected to commit heinous crimes. The infection takes over their minds and turns them into monsters. Mallory, on the other hand, dismisses the warning at first, assuming that the pandemic is far from the United States. Jessica later drives her to a doctor's appointment. During the hospital visit, Dr. Laffan performs tests on Mallory and inquires about her preparation for parenthood. Mallory finally responds affirmatively after some hesitation. On their walk back from the hospital, Mallory notices a woman repeatedly smashing her head against a glass pane. This frightening occurrence pushes Mallory to face the fact that the European virus has spread to the United States. She informs Jessica that they must return home immediately. However, by the time they are about to leave, the city has deteriorated into pandemonium. Numerous people have succumbed to the infection and are seeking to end their lives in a variety of horrible ways. Car accidents, falls, and other sad incidents occur all around them. Jessica drives her car amid the chaos, ostensibly on her way to their house. In a terrifying turn of events, Jessica's sight becomes locked on something only she can see, rendering her immobile. Mallory makes desperate attempts to reawaken her, but her efforts are futile. Their car gets involved in a terrible collision the next instant. Though the sisters escape unharmed, Jessica commits an inconceivable act while still in shock. Mallory has little time to mourn because the city has devolved into a war zone. People are dying everywhere, and she tries to follow a group to safety, but stumbles and falls. Despite her husband's misgivings, a kind woman leaves her home to help Mallory. Tragically, the thing seizes the gentle woman, and she stares at it for a moment before going into a blazing automobile, which explodes, taking her life. Mallory is ultimately assisted to her feet and taken into a residence by a man named Tom after this terrifying incident. She meets various people inside the house, including the owner, Greg, his friend Douglas, and Machine Gun Kelly. In the following scenario, the group gathers in the main room to discuss the supernatural monster that is wreaking havoc over the earth. A grocery store employee named Charlie believes it could be the end of the world, while others feel it is an act of God. Regardless, they are all aware that the creature is impenetrable and that even glancing at it results in instant death. Mallory, who is still mourning from the unexpected loss of her sister, finds refuge in Tom. Her life had been reasonably typical until an hour ago, when everything changed. Later, the entire group works together to board up all the doors and windows, ensuring that no one looks outside accidentally. Mallory and her children had been rowing on the boat for 6 hours already. They occasionally use a blanket to temporarily remove their blindfolds. Mallory tries to call for help using a walkie-talkie, but all she hears is the menacing murmuring of the invisible thing. Returning to the present, Olympia, a pregnant survivor, begs to be allowed inside one day. Douglas first refuses to admit her, but the others eventually persuade him. Olympia appears, and it is clear that she too is expecting. Greg then suggests inspecting the CCTV cameras to see what is going on outside. Despite their suspicion, none of the members of the group oppose. Greg is reviewing the clip on his computer when he notices something and freezes. It becomes clear that the creature has taken possession of him. A huge bang is heard from Greg's room after a while, and when the others run to investigate, they find him lying in a pool of his own blood. This terrifying finding leads them to believe that the monster can even possess people via electrical gadgets, prompting them to destroy the computer. It has now been 14 hours since the family began rowing in the river. Mallory hears a man's voice encouraging her that removing her blindfold is safe. She urges her children to stay low and wear blindfolds because she suspects the individual is diseased. The approaching voice claims to have food and has seen the entity, which it describes as friendly. Mallory, anticipating the danger, strikes him down with a machete as he leaps toward the boat. The narrative then returns to the past. Mallory, Tom, and a few others decide to venture to a local department store where Charlie used to work in their desperate condition, where the gang has exhausted its food supplies. They take measures by painting the automobile windows black and using GPS for navigation. The GPS begins beeping violently during the ride, signaling the entity's presence. Tom, on the other hand, expertly guides them to safety and into the store. Inside, the group quickly grabs necessary supplies. Mallory also notices several pet birds and chooses to bring them along because she believes they can feel the presence of the possessed people. The cries of a man imprisoned in a freezer are heard as the crew is almost finished scavenging. Tom and the others decide to release him, claiming that he has been held for days and is running out of food. The birds become upset at the same time, indicating the presence of the creature nearby. The man who was liberated from the freezer demonstrates demonic tendencies, overwhelming the group. Recognizing the impending disaster, Charlie selflessly sacrifices himself to save the others. That night, while Mallory and Douglas were talking in the kitchen, they heard noises coming from the garage. Unfortunately, Machine Gun Kelly and his girlfriend have gotten away with the group's only car. In the present, after spending 24 hours on the river, Mallory's tiredness causes the boat to collide with an old vehicle, causing the boy and their supplies to fall into the water. Mallory, fortunately, rescues the youngster and pulls the boat to shore. She tells the children to stay behind and goes into the woods to get supplies, eventually finding an abandoned hospital where she gathers food and clothing. The thing taunts her by yelling her name as she rushes out of the building. The little girl feels concerned at the coast and disobeys her mother's orders, walking into the forest to look for her. Mallory intervenes and takes her back after the creature attempts to manipulate her. The three continue their journey aboard the boat together. Olympia then lets a dubious man named Gary inside the residence without consulting the others. The group is outraged by this choice, but they eventually evaluate Gary and allow him to stay. He claims that humans on the outside have discovered a means to coexist with the entity without wearing blindfolds. Except for Douglas, who confronts him with a gun. Cheryl, Greg's mother, steps in and knocks Douglas out with a vase, resulting in his incarceration in the garage. Olympia apologizes for causing difficulties and being a burden after this episode. But Mallory tells her that she did nothing wrong. The two pregnant women become friends and pledge to take after each other's children if one of them dies. As a baby shower gift, Mallory gives Olympia a Hello Kitty toy. The small girl holds the identical toy in the present, revealing her to be Olympia's daughter. As they reach the deadly rapids, Mallory wraps herself and the children in a blanket. She says that this section of the voyage will be the most dangerous, and that one of them will have to remove their blindfold to guide the way. Both youngsters indicate a desire to volunteer, but Mallory is conflicted, unable to choose between them. After much contemplation, she decides that none of them will look, instead choosing to face the rapids and leave their fate to chance. Returning to the past, Mallory and Olympia both go into labor at the same time. While Tom and Cheryl are helping the people upstairs, Gary, the suspicious man, is up to no good. He discloses his ownership by displaying a collection of monster drawings, indicating his aim to infect others as the entity's messenger. His first measures include putting Mallory's birds in the refrigerator to keep them from notifying the rest of the gang and ripping the newspapers off the windows. Olympia gives birth to a daughter, and Mallory gives birth to a son. Gary, on the other hand, interrupts by lifting the window blinds and exposes everyone to the thing. Mallory struggles to keep her sight away from Olympia, who becomes possessed and attempts the unfathomable from the window. She offers her daughter to Mallory just as she is about to act. Cheryl, the elderly woman, is forced to open her eyes and meet the same destiny as Olympia. Douglas appears with a gun and shoots Gary in the arm in the midst of the mayhem. Douglas is fired as a result of a struggle between the two. Fortunately, Tom is able to eliminate Gary with the use of his rifle. Only Tom, Mallory, and the children are left. 5 years pass, and the four have found sanctuary in a secluded house in the woods, together with the birds. They've removed themselves from the dangers of the city, but the children remain unidentified. Mallory is chastised by Tom for this, but she believes it is unimportant. They hear noises outside one day and discover a gang of infected people in cars looking for the uninfected. They know that their current residence is no longer secure. Mallory's walkie-talkie unexpectedly activates that night while they sleep, and a man named Rick chats from the other side. He claims to be in a secure complex with plenty of food and supplies. However, getting to the complex will be difficult. Rick tells that they must go for several hours along the river, navigating hazardous rapids. He underlines that the river is dangerous for youngsters and that the birds are the key to locating the complex. The pair talks about it the next morning. Mallory is hesitant to attend the facility because of their prior encounter with Gary. The infected folks return the next day as they pillage a nearby residence. Recognizing that they are running out of time, Tom begs Mallory to take the children and leave while he deals with the threat. Mallory reluctantly decides to leave with the children, putting their safety first. Tom decides to fight the approaching sick people, while she quickly takes her valuables and exits out the back door. Tom manages to take down a few of them, but he is wounded by a gunshot. To finish off the infected, he removes his blindfold, transforming himself into a monster, and takes them out one by one before executing the unimaginable act. Mallory and the children arrive at home. She begins to recount their journey, mimicking the beginning of the film. They are now 42 hours into their journey and face the hazardous rapids. Despite her best efforts to steer through the stormy waters, their boat capsizes, sending them into the river. Fortunately, Mallory is able to grab her children and safely reach the shore. The three set out through the woods, with the entity's invisible presence attempting to trick them into taking off their blindfolds. They remain steadfast, though, and follow the sound of the birds. They eventually arrive at a large compound, where Mallory furiously bangs on the door. They are admitted after proving that they are not diseased. They ultimately meet Rick inside the property, who reveals that it used to be a school for the blind, which is why the residents were immune to the sickness. Dr. LaFan arrives and congratulates Mallory on her gorgeous children. When asked what their names are, Mallory responds with Olympia's and Tom. The film closes with her opening her bird box and releasing the birds. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this.